Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Experts. Today we'll be talking about field ops. I have begun the recording for the session, so we can refer back to this at a later time. So today you have myself, Liz Colon, on the line. I'm a senior education consultant here with FranConnect, and you also have Sherry, our Director of Education Services, who will be facilitating the session as well. Today we are going again to talk about the field ops session. We have a few sessions coming after this one that we'll review at the end. At any point you can raise your hand during the call and we will unmute the lines so that you can ask your question verbally. You can also place your question into the chat box. It looks a little bit like a message bubble that you might see in a comic strip in your toolbar. So you can absolutely use that to message us any questions that you may have. Okay, so I'm going to do a brief review at the beginning here about field ops. We're going to take a look at a completed audit form, and then we'll take a look at some specific reasons why we want to set up our form using our libraries first. We'll then open up the floor for questions, and questions can be about any topic, and we'll try to group them together so that we ask questions related to a module at a time, if that's the way that it turns out we can do things today. Now there are fewer of you on the line than previous calls today, and so feel free to ask any questions to make sure you get good value out of the session here today. As always, if you think of any questions during the week, you can go ahead and email them to us at training@franconnect.com. We'll be happy to answer them when you email them, in addition to saving them for next week's call. So this is what we have coming up. Next week we've got the training module. We'll take off the week of Thanksgiving and we'll come back on December 2nd and look at support, and then we'll round out the year with our marketing modules. And so please stay tuned for those if you're interested in coming on Ask the Experts. Now remember, this is just a featured topic. If you have any questions during the week about other modules, feel free to hop on any of these calls and ask us then as well. All right, well, I'm going to jump out of my PowerPoint here and head on into the Field Ops module. Here you can see that we are in Field Ops, and what I have here up on my screen represents a completed visit. Okay, we have gone out to our store, we've audited our store, we've asked a series of questions and gotten the responses from our auditor. We've assigned a single task as a result of this audit, and we can now see our compliance score. This is our end goal. This is what we're trying to achieve when we set up our audits here in Field Ops. With that said, whenever I'm doing this training with my audience, and we have a training coming up next week for those of you who have not yet perhaps had training on this module, there is one next week. And you can see here again, this is our completed audit form. Now we have a specific way that we train this to make sure that you most efficiently create this form for your team in a way that will allow you to use questions in audit forms going forward. So I'm going to take and move to my admin section. So from the top right hand side under admin, I'll choose Field Ops from the left hand column. And the top three areas that we're going to look at today really quickly are our action library, our question library, and our visit form. Here's the deal. If I click on my visit form, I have the option to add a new visit form. I can create the form, and fill out the fields of this. And then from here, I can add questions. I'll first have to add a tab, and then I'll be able to add, because of the way I set this up, and then I'll be able to add questions from here. Now, This makes perfect sense for those of you who perhaps haven't had training with me yet. From this field or from this form, you can create a question right from here. And I've seen this happen quite a few times where a franchisor gets really excited about the Field Ops module, and before we have the opportunity to have training, they come in and they create their form. And I never want to discourage you from finding the system to be intuitive and being able to do what you can do. However, there is one field on this form, on this particular screen, that if you miss it, you do yourself a huge disservice. And that's Add to Question Library. When my franchisor gets really excited and creates the form, the next question that immediately comes after that is, so how do I use this question in another form? And the truth is, if we haven't selected this field here, we have to create that question in another form again. And so I'm going to highly discourage all of you to not use, or to not use this method. Don't create the question in the form, because if by accident you forget to check this box, then you've lost that question for use in other forms later. So what I'm gonna encourage you to do today is, under the Field Ops, is for you to always create your questions from the library. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do is create your actions, and we go over this in training. Actions are tasks that are assigned when a store is found to be non-compliant. So you can see here, beverage delivery issues. Please refer to section X for food serving best practices. We've got brand standards audit. Maybe our brand standards aren't meeting. So this is the task that gets assigned when the question that's asked is responded with a no, and this store is non-compliant. And so you can see here, we can easily create all of our tasks, okay? And then once we do that, we'll add our tasks to we'll add our questions to the library. And when we add a question, we'll be able to choose then which, in the response section, which area or which task gets assigned to this question. Okay. So here's the thing. I've seen a lot of franchisors who use a section of their ops manual as reference to a question that's being asked. And this is a really wise and best practice thing. If you refer to a page number and you later come and edit your ops manual, the page numbers for all of your questions will change, and that is a headache for someone on your team to come back in here and change the page numbers. But if section 5 of your ops manual is always about beverage and food delivery, then you can refer to section 5, and that at least gives both your auditor and your franchisee a reference point for completing this task or completing this question correctly and against compliance standards. Okay, we can upload visual attachments here. We can make our response mandatory, which is always my recommendation, and that's something we go into a little bit more in training as well. And then we can choose our response types. And so this particular case, we'll do a quick yes or no. We'll assign a task on non-compliance. We'll include the question value, all things we review in training. But you can see here then, I can assign an action, action being a task that gets assigned on non-compliance. So I can come in here then and I can say, where was it? Beverage delivery issues. And then my task is automatically assigned here in my question. I'll go ahead and click add, and now I've added my question, and now I can go back and add that question to the form from the library without actually having with then the ability rather for me to use that question again and again and again in different forms. So if an example would be if I do a very extensive annual audit, and that annual audit is very comprehensive. It's got 150 questions. And then quarterly, I want the auditors to go out and maybe do a 30-question audit. Or perhaps I allow my franchisees to do a self-audit quarterly in preparation for the annual audit. The same question that I use in this particular or in the annual audit form can then also be used in the quarterly audit form when in fact I place that question into the library rather than directly into the form. So my whole purpose of showing this to you is to make sure that you know that you save yourself a lot of time if you create the question in the library first before creating the question in your audit form. Okay, and so sort of just a cautionary tale on that one. Now there's a question on the line about when training is. I have training scheduled for this next week. Sherry, if you're on the line, would you check the schedule and see what exact day it is for me so I don't have to pull up my calendar? And we'll get you an answer, Amy, to that question here in just a moment. All right, so who has questions about field ops today? Happy to answer anything that you have. Remember to raise your hand and or place your question into the chat window. Okay, for those of you who are on the call and perhaps came for the purpose of maybe getting something out of this or hearing what other questions that other folks have, that's awesome. If you want to share perhaps what you wanted to get out of this, there may be a question in there for me to be able to answer for you so that we can make sure that this is a good use of your time today. So, Amy, the next field ops session is Monday, November 14th, and that will be at 2 p.m. And I believe there are a few spots open. Okay, any questions? Okay, I've got one coming in here. Sherry just sent out an invitation for everyone to register for field ops training on Monday. So if you've not yet had the course and are interested in taking the course and have the field ops module, please feel free to join us. And Amy's asking, how do we find out about the schedule for offering training on particular modules? So Amy, we do public training courses mostly for new folks that are coming on board here for us. If you happen to need a refresher, the link that Sherry just shared is available for you to go ahead and take a look at our course catalog and see what sessions we're offering for the modules. And I'm sorry, for those of you who aren't sure where she may have shared it, it's in the chat box. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at perhaps some other things while y'all are thinking of some questions. So let me come back out to the admin section of Field Ops. One of the other libraries that we have available is the media library, and this can be very useful for you if you're wanting to reference certain pictures that may be important to your organization. So an example that I use is I recognize that Starbucks is not a franchise organization, but we all are very aware of the different types of Starbucks, right? So you've got the airport Starbucks and you've got the neighborhood location standalone Starbucks, right? And so from a visual standpoint, you know that the airport location has, you know, just a main line and very few retail items, and then you know that your standalone store has every possible coffee mug, water container, coffee, whatever, known to man, and you have a ton of choices. And so here's the thing. When it comes time for audit, each store may be on the same audit, but there may be questions on each that may be applicable only to one store or another, right? So the very extensive 120 question audit may only have or may be very relevant to the standalone store, but only some of those questions may be relevant to your smaller store. So you may create audits by different types of store. In that, as you are perhaps doing what are called floor resets in the retail industry, where your merchandise that you have available is being changed perhaps for the holiday season. We are walking into the holiday season. And so what potentially you could do here with the media library is use references to those floor sets. So if you create an audit for the Christmas season, right, and your auditor is going out to each of the stores to evaluate whether or not that store is meeting the floor reset expectations, you're going to put a picture up of the way the merchandise should look, and then use that picture and reference that picture in one of the questions that you have inside your audit form. And so the media library allows you to give that visual to both your auditor and then your franchisee in the event of a self-audit, so that they can easily see what the expectation is and whether or not they're meeting that expectation. Now, a question did come in on the line. Is it possible to add a new section to your audit and then drag pre-existing tabs into that section? So there is a way to drag and drop inside of FieldOps, and I may have to dive a little bit deeper on this. Allie, do you mind if I open up your line and you can kind of explain this to me a little bit more? I don't see you on the call. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, Allie, I've unmuted you. If you unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So in our audit, this is a new module for us. So when we had it created, they created a bunch of sections. And now going back and trying to redesign our audit a little bit, we figured out that there was a way to add tabs instead. And so I didn't know if there was an easy way to just drag and drop those pre-existing sections into a new tab, or if we're going to have to go into Question Library and add those same questions back individually.
I'm sorry, Allie, are you looking to create like a whole new form and kind of drag these in?
Yeah, so we copied the form that we currently have, and we're trying to redesign it in a way so it flows a little bit better for our audits. So we were trying to create tabs to be able to pull the different sections into individual tabs, and right now it doesn't let you. It just lets you add a question, basically.
So, the only thing that I can think is when you click Add Question, for example, and you choose from library, if you set your questions up into categories, then that'll help you to pull your questions in by category. And I don't really know if that answers the question. But any of your questions can also be sort of dragged and dropped and moved around with the opportunity to drag them into a different section of the form. So I don't know if that answers your question. I may not be able to understand it. I may have to take a look at your system, or you may have to demo what it is that you're looking to try to do for me on like a sidebar.
Yeah, we can do that. I can play around with it and then maybe set up another time.
Yeah, because
our form.
Yeah, I understand that you're copying your form, you have questions, and you're trying to redesign it. At any point you can, so if like you don't like the tabs that you have, you could essentially add more tabs and kind of drag and drop and move things around. but that would be the only way that you can kind of reorder and move things from one tab to another
Okay.
without having to add the question in of itself. When
Okay.
I typically train this lesson, I talk a lot to people about creating the categories in the way that you, like creating the main categories in the way that you want them to appear when you're creating your questions. So I use a lot the example of like, the facility, right? So our auditor is going to evaluate the exterior of the facility and the interior of the facility, and we have the option to either create exterior facility tab and interior facility tab, or we have the option to create a facility tab which has sections, right? Exterior and interior. And by doing that, we can go ahead and then order the way in which we want our auditor to be able to go out to this location and evaluate. So we know when the auditor pulls up to the location, from minute one, he's evaluating the appearance of the exterior of the building. Are the trash cans free and clear? Is the parking lot free of debris? Are the windows clean? Is the door working properly? If there's a doorbell, is that functioning? He's looking at all of that stuff almost immediately upon pulling up at the location, which means the exterior facility is going to be like the first thing. And so I talk to people about organizing this in a way that's going to walk your auditor through the process from like minute one all the way through to the end. So how do we want him to look at the location? First exterior, then interior, then back office, and perhaps employees are in there somewhere in the evaluation of whether or not they're meeting expectations. And if it's a restaurant concept, of course, we're looking at food prep and making sure the conditions of the kitchen meet expectation and compliance and so on. So I don't know if that helps at all, but just a little tidbit about the way that we sort of talk about this in the training session.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then, Allie, please let me know. I'm happy if you play around with it and you get it to kind of drag and drop to what you need, let me know. And then if not, we can kind of explore some additional options aside from our call today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, I'll give a few more minutes for you to ask questions. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I appreciate your time today. You can go ahead and jump off the line. You've got about 30 minutes left of your day back, so happy to do that for you. And then please, if you think of questions at any time, please let me know at training@franconnect.com. Thank you so much and have a great day.